What is your nobody will ever believe this story? My granddad raised a crocodile in my mum's backyard pool on an island. While she was growing up, every so often they would take him out to sea and try to release him. But a few days later he would come crawling up the local boat ramp, going home. He killed the neighbor's chickens a few times. They didn't like him so much. When he was taken into care at a crocodile park, they flew him on a plane to the mainland. He is one of the top 5 biggest crocs at his wildlife park. Edit. Picture proof in my profile area. Second edit. Article written about Henry back in 2008 and one in 2019. I once left my house in nothing but a shirt and sweatpants in a suicidal manic depressive state, bought a pack of cigarettes, and told the universe that if it couldn't give me a good reason not to kill myself by the time I finished the pack, I'd do it. I ended up seeing Daniel Radcliffe smoking a rollie outside of a Starbucks. I offered him a real cigarette pretending to have no idea who he was. "Oh, no thank you," he said. "I much prefer the ritual of rolling my own." What I could have said was, "Well yeah, that makes sense seeing as how you're a wizard." What I did say was, "Hi, I'm Thvar. What's your name?" Given my pact, and with nothing to lose, I unloaded all my emotional baggage on him right there. We ended up talking on the curb for half an hour. He asked me about my tattoos and listened to me recite Shakespeare. Eventually he touched my shoulder, looked me in the eyes, and said, "I know there's no good way to say this, but please don't kill yourself." He asked me some reasons why I don't. Well, my cat, my mom, my brother are alright. Well, I'm glad the cat came first. Totally charming. Finally he announced that he was going to wander off that way. I'd left my house without my phone due to the nature of my pact with the universe. Having nothing but the cigarettes on me to distract me from my angst was part of it, and so made no attempt to follow him or to get his number. I went back to that Starbucks several times over the coming weeks to no avail. I still don't regret not trying to give him my number, though, as it would have violated the spirit of the pact. You can't get selfish with a gift from the universe like that. Bipolar people may understand what I mean. In any case, acknowledging his fame or getting all stalky would have broken the spell. Literally a month later I saw a headline saying, "Daniel Radcliffe comes to aid of mugging victim." Clearly, that man is on a mission. That was years ago, and I haven't been suicidal in the same way since. I once threw the inside of a pen at least 9 feet clear across a room and skewered a fly that was annoying me. Legit, I felt like a ninja and have no way to prove it to anyone. Not gonna lie, it's probably my peak and it's all been downhill ever since. Was doing a service call at an equestrian farm. I went to the bathroom in the barn to take a leak. The door was slightly ajar and the light was off. I pushed open the door and hit the light only to see a goat dressed in a fleece vest eating toilet paper off the roll. He gave me this look like to say, "WTF are you looking at?" I turned off the light and left. Orlando Bloom winked at me once when walking past. I'm a dude. I saw a bird unscrew a light bulb once. I knocked a cup of coffee off my counter and caught it and no coffee spilled out of it. Was lying in bed watching a movie and too lazy to move. Saw a small harmless spider drop down from a thread on the ceiling, obviously heading for the far side of my bed. Even if it wasn't venomous, I didn't want to share my bed with it, but also didn't want to move. Not thinking it'd actually do anything, I reached out my arm towards it, but still quite a few feet away, and started waving my fingers at it in annoyance. To my absolute surprise, it immediately stopped its descent and actually retracted back up its line while I was sitting there in surprise. Took me a couple of seconds to realize that my hand must have looked like the most giant freaking spider he'd ever seen, standing on its back legs and waving the front 5 in the duck off or I'll wreck you dance. I started out in the normal math class until my teacher realized I should switch to the advanced class because I got perfect scores on everything. We were just about to start the chapter about telling time when I made the switch. The advanced math class already knew how to tell time. I had all digital clocks at my house. I didn't actually learn how to tell time till I was about to start high school and thought I should learn. I was once arrested for dueling. That was the charge. One time when I was a teenager, I was playing pool with friends. The pizza arrived or whatever and I took one last shot just as everyone was leaving and sank like 5 balls. It was the single best move I have ever made in any game I have ever played. But no one saw it and there was no way to take credit for it without sounding like a liar. My ex, American, met him in the US, and my other ex, Dutch, met him 3 years later in Argentina, work at the same office in Amsterdam. They are colleagues. I found out cause I saw the FB post in which they were at the same office 2 years after me and Dutchy broke up, and I still live in Argentina. Also, some years ago, I was in a relationship with a guy. We lived together in a tiny apartment. The relationship ended in a terrible way. 4 years later, I started dating another guy. He takes me to his house. It was the apartment I used to share with my ex. And let me tell you, Buenos Aires is a huge city. I saw a bee eat a piece of cheese. It was horrifying. I didn't know it was possible. Watched an ant pick up its injured friend with its 2 front legs and ran away on its last 2 legs like a human would. Edit. I'm aware that ants have 6 legs. I just can't exactly remember what the middle 2 legs were doing, but I want to believe that they were just flailing around while the ant ran. I saw David Wenham, Ferramit, Lotta, at a cafe downtown. He was just walking by with someone I assume may have been a friend or partner. You just don't get celebrities where I live very often. I told one of my mates and he didn't believe me. It was him. I watched a kid on his bike get hit by a car. Somehow he got up like it was nothing. I legit found a $100 bill on the ground. I couldn't believe it myself, but I took it straight to the ATM and it was accepted. Nobody really believes I can smell pressure. My dog and I were on a walk on our local college campus one weekend and he nosed a lilac bush that was apparently full of little butterflies. They all took off into the wind and then proceeded to do a perfect little spiral around me. I was so dumbfounded by them all that I was spinning in circles trying to see them all, which probably contributed to them doing a spiral. I was making air currents with my dress, but then it culminated with them landing on my head like a crown. Presumably because of the sweat. Butterflies are weird like that. My dog, by this time, is sitting nearby waiting for me to get over it and keep walking, looking majestic as heck with his own little smattering of butterflies hovering around his face. It was wild enough on its own, but then I hear this shuffling and vague gasping sound, and I look in time to see that there was some guy walking by a ways away who had apparently tripped over his own feet from staring. From his perspective it must have been surreal. I was wearing this fluffy, billowy red dress because I'd just gotten back from church, and I always walked my dog barefoot to make sure I never took him on surfaces that were too hot during the warm weather. My dog was this enormous wolf-looking husky mix, and at the time I had longish hair, so for all he knows, he walks out of the library and sees a legit Disney princess in a cloud of butterflies with a giant wolf standing guard. It was the most ethereal and fancy I've ever felt, even without knowing there was a witness. I mean, a cloud of butterflies materialized from a lilac bush to form a living crown. It was breathtaking. I held a stick straight up in the air while pretending to be a magical creature, and then it immediately started raining heavily. My wife has an artifact, reflective metallic nose ring looking object, embedded in her lower left rib cage between the bone and fatty tissue. It was discovered after an MRI for unrelated issue. Johnny Sins took a picture of me and my wife in Maui on our honeymoon. I chickened out of asking for a pic. Edit. For us. I feel like I should clarify given the topic. The owls. When my grandpa passed away in November of 2008, I was at my dad's house. The front yard is almost enclosed by pine trees. I kept hearing weird noises, so I decided to go outside and see what it was. We shone a light on the trees and was greeted by many pairs of eyes. There had to be at least 20 owls just hanging out in the trees. My grandpa had an interesting way with birds and we had a very close bond. That was the only time the owls had ever been to our house. Until my mastiff passed away last year. I was home alone, brushing my teeth when I heard the familiar sound. I thought I was going crazy, but no, there they were, owls in the trees. A completely different time of year. 12 years later, the owls keep watch. This is pretty sad, but the night my mom died, I lived in the same house, sleeping down the hall. I was asleep and I suddenly woke up to a cold sinking feeling. I went into my living room to check on my mom and she took her final breath soon after. There was no way my body could have known as I couldn't hear nor see her from my room. I found and caught a shiny ho-oh first time playing Pokemon Gold. All my friends thought I cheated. I snuck into the Canadian Parliament building at around 1:30 AM on the 27th of June 1998. My old boss has a NXIVM brand. I saw it when she reached up to get something and panicked because it just seems rude to point out the branded skin on another person. I immediately recognized the symbol and it was surreal. I was immersed in podcasts and stuff about that at the time. I went and watched Pirates of the Caribbean at the theater with Linkin Park after they finished their part in a concert in DC. When I was a kid, I got a shoebox and filled it with some sand, a pile of sugar, and a few ants, like 3 or 4. I brought that box into the house and put it in my cabinet. I forgot about the box for like 2 days. When I went to check the box, because I thought the ants couldn't get out, I saw something that still seemed insane to me. But I know what I saw. A military style formation of ants. In a large rectangle. Sorted by sizes with the smallest ones in front. Like 2. Might have been 4. Big ones in front of the others facing the formation. The large ones were facing away from the cabinet doors. The ants remained still for like 2 or 3 seconds then scattered in every direction. OMG finally. I was at a local jazz bar club. After enjoying a few cocktails I have the urge to use the ladies' room. So I walk and plop my ass down on the toilet when suddenly, a large woman bursts in and proceeds to pull down her pants and piss on the ducking ground. All while making eye contact with me and while my pee was still coming out. I was in shock. And all she said was oh girl I just couldn't hold it any longer. It was so surreal. I just walked out. Didn't wipe and didn't wash my hands. I was shook to the core. Edit. It was a one-person stall in a really old bar. If I remember correctly the door locked but if you jiggled it enough it would open. It all happened so fast and I had already had a few drinks lol so some details are blurry. This was about 3 years ago. Edit. I'm a girl lol this happened in the women's restroom. Got a hole-in-one playing golf by myself with no one else around me on the course. Most of my friends take my word it but still give me a hard time saying it never happened. Sean Astin, Goonies, Lotta, Stranger Things, was in my bar one night. I was outside sneaking a quick smoke when he randomly walked up, hugged me and said you got this. I didn't even recognize him at first until someone mentioned who he was and I closed his tab. I was the only bartender and had been at capacity for 6 hours. I once threw a frisbee into a basketball hoop from further than full court in a gym with about other 25 people in it. Not a single person saw and no one believed me. My sister and I shared a room in HS and would get ready together most mornings without saying a word as we would just be too tired to interact. I was sitting at the vanity one morning and her on the bed when I had a sudden urge to flick my scrunchie. All I said was watch this and released the hairband across the room. I don't know how to explain this but the scrunchie went right around the post of the bed which was a sphere the size of a big fist. When I tell you, logically this should not have happened. We didn't even celebrate. All we could do was stare at each other puzzled. The silence was then broken as my dad walked in. I can only imagine how insane we looked as we tried to explain to him what just happened. Honestly it's not that serious and this is my first post, but I think about this a lot. When I was a kid, 10, I went to the library with my sister, 12, and my mom. My sister and I doing the usual walking up and down the rows of books finding whatever. Eventually we split ways and a while later, I found my mom and asked her where my sister was. She hadn't seen her, so we go looking in the last area I saw her. She wasn't there. We go to another section. Nope. The next section. Nothing. We go to the other side of the library. Nothing. We check the bathrooms, outside the doors, and do another lap around the library. Nothing. We asked the library staff if they had seen her and they hadn't but they agreed to start looking. About 30 or so minutes has passed at this point and we are starting to panic. We continued searching every last corner of that library and now we have started shouting her name. And others are as well. I'd say an hour into it my stepdad was called and he was on his way and he was even stopping cars as they left the library parking lot. This whole time there were 15 plus people looking for her and shouting her name. If she was in that library she would have heard us. My mom was at the front desk and she picked up the phone to call the police and my sister comes walking toward her from the kids section, completely unaware of what had happened. She said she was sitting in the kids section reading a book on skateboarding the whole time. We asked her how long she had been there and she said maybe 15 minutes. It had been over an hour since we saw her. I don't know what happened that day but she was absolutely not in that library. We never went back. I once saw a kid strangle another kid at homeschool gym class. The victim survived and the strangler showed up at class again a few weeks later. I won over $1,200 on a $2 wager in horse racing and then less than a week later I won over $1,600 on a $6 wager. The first was a pick 5, meaning I had to pick the winner of 5 consecutive races and the second was a pick 4 which is similar, but only 4 races. Luckily, I actually have proof. My friend and I were just sitting outside a 7-Eleven with some 40s and a packed hash pipe on St. Patrick's Day back in like 09 or 08. We were pretty loaded when this Ford Explorer came tearing around the corner like a bat out of hell. He sideswiped a whole row of parked cars, which tore his bumper and a bunch of other it off his car. The dude stumbled out of his car, picked up as much of his broken car as he could and stuck it in the back, got back in his car and took off. We were standing there, totally blown away, when less than a minute later a cop came tearing around the same corner. He asked us if we saw what happened. We said yeah, and he asked us to come with him to ID the guy. So we grabbed our 40s and the hash pipe and hopped in the back of the cruiser. I asked the cop if I could smoke a cigarette, and he said I could. So then I told him that because of my MMJ card I could smoke cannabis anywhere I could smoke a cigarette. And he just cracked the windows a bit as we hauled absolute ass down the main boulevard, roasting hash and chugging 40s the whole way. The Explorer was pulled over a couple miles away. The cop pulled over and we all got out, still smoking the hash. We give our statements between puffs and swigs. They confirm the story since the guy had his bumper in the back like we explained, and the paint transfer and everything matched the story. The cop dropped us back off at 7-Eleven, at which point we had to buy some more beer and pack another hash bowl. That was a duckin' crazy night. I kicked a wasp that was flying towards me midair like a damn ninja and killed it. No witnesses except my dog and God. I was once in an auto parts store and one guy in the stock shelves calls out Shelly. Then someone starts talking about Candy Mountain. One customer starts quietly singing the Candy Mountain song. I start in with Magic Liar Pluridan talk, and we're all having an awesome time. Except this one customer. He has no clue what the duck is happening. He sets down the box of something or other he's holding and backs away to the exit, trying not to let any of us out of his sight as he makes his escape. I took a one-way flight 1,200 miles away. 7 months later I took another one-way flight back home and sat next to the same random person. Capital I, a totally average nerdy teenager in the late 80s. Hooked up with a famous blonde sitcom star a few years older than me in a Nick nightclub I wasn't even old enough to be in legally and ended up having my one and only one night stand. Given the way both of us looked at the time, it's not worth telling anyone that I know it happened because they would never believe it. The one good friend I told back when I was in college, instead of responding with any sort of disbelief or claiming I was lying, instead said I never really thought she was hot. One day I noticed my dog standing at the glass door with something in his mouth. It was a $5 bill. We went to BK and grabbed him a cheeseburger for a reward. The next day he was at the door with a $1 so we got him another burger. Figured it was only fair as he paid for it. Edit. Wow. That is a lot of upvotes. I guess I need to provide an image of the pupper in question. I miss spam. He was a good dog, comma. I saw my mom's 2 pet dogs, miniature poodles, having a human-like conversation, moving their little mouths and coming to some type of agreement. I once actually had to give legit CPR to a man when he had a heart attack. He was dead when the paramedics got to the house, but the medics took over and got him back. He died again in the ambulance on the way to the hospital, but they brought him back again. If it wasn't for me, he would have never had a chance. Also, doing CPR for real is ducking exhausting. Was playing darts at a bar and hit the back of a dart with another dart. Bartender thought I just broke it. Oh, forgot about this one. I live in Belfast, Ireland, and one day I was walking to work with my earphones and listening to Fozzy. Turned a corner and there was the lead singer and WWE superstar Chris Jericho. Even showed him my phone and that I was halfway through a song so he didn't think I was bulleting. Anyway, spoke for about 30 minutes. Taught him some Irish Gaelic phrases and took photos. He even posted me on his Instagram. I saw a morbidly obese lady in a Walmart operating a rascal run over a midget on Black Friday. If it was in a movie I would have thought it absurd. I keep waking up to my lights flickering at 5:55 am. It's been about 7+ times and nobody believes me. Just moved into this house a few months ago. If it happens again I'm getting a camera installed. Back in my drug days I was at a meth cook's house and he had just finished a batch off a day or so before and was gonna try it by slamming it. He did the plunge and about 3 seconds went by and I hear screaming coming from the cook room. I stand up and go to the room and he's grabbing his arms and face yelling loud. He stands up and knocks a burner over and spills some kind of liquid all over it and it just basically explodes half the room. He moved out of the way just enough to not get fully engulfed in the flames and only caught his pants area on fire. So I'm helping him move to the bathroom while 2 other guys are putting out the fire. Since he was a cook he actually had multiple fire extinguishers in his cook room, and they're getting it surprisingly well. I get him in the shower and I'm running water all over him and he keeps saying he's on fire. All I can see is little bits of blood from his eyes, nose and palms of his hands. His leg was kinda burnt but nothing crazy. He's screaming about being on fire still and I can't figure out WTF is up. Hospital time. Turns out he cut his methyl-ity and it had lots of lye in his mix. It was seeping out his pores, eyes, nose, mouth, ass, everywhere. He was in the hospital for almost a month. Went to jail for a little over a year. Fire department still came for the fire and saw everything. And got completely sober after that. He works as an off-the-books help for a caretaker at local park now. When I was 8 years old and my sister was 7, we both had the same dream and ended up sleepwalking together in the night out into the middle of the road. Let me give you some backstory. Earlier that day we had new neighbors move into the house behind us. They had 2 daughters around our age that we quickly made friends with. Well, that night my sister and I both dreamt we're running in a field full of sunflowers, picking them for our new friends. I felt so happy and carefree in the dream, and I could see my little sister running alongside me, also picking sunflowers. Well, when we woke up, my mom and our neighbors were there telling us that we had both been sleepwalking around outside together holding hands, and about to walk into the middle of the street when my neighbors, not the ones we had just met, who had just got home, spotted us. The wife ran to grab us, while the husband ran inside his house to get his gun before going into our house to check on my mom, because we had left the front door wide open. They thought there might have been a break-in. My mom is hard of hearing. She is completely deaf in one ear and only has about 15% of her hearing in her other ear and wears a hearing aid but takes it off at night to sleep, which is why she never heard us go out the front door. Anyways, after we realized what had happened we talked about everything and literally recalled all of the same details and remember seeing each other in our dreams. It's now been 20 years and we still remember everything the same and stick by our memories of that night. I'm just grateful to our neighbors because who knows what would have happened if they didn't notice us. My fire buddy shot someone through. Right word IDK English is hard. Me I have a mark on both sides of my chest. No one believes that I can see brand new fully functioning fluorescent lights flickering. I have Asperger's though so that might have something to do with it. It's very annoying. I want to die when I'm in buildings with them. That I hatched a shiny, flawless avionics. Ended up walking THR grounds of the community college on LSD with a buddy and coming across the day's earlier attempt at the largest paper mache volcano. 50 feet wide she was and ever undulating.